If you're chasing data down instead of seeing it in one place, you need the Intuit ERP. Intuit Enterprise Suite. All your data in one place with built-in AI for real-time insights. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You are now diving headlong into the deep end of the Stone Zone. You know, today at lunchtime I was hungry, so I asked one of the young people who worked for me to go out and grab me a meatball grinder. He looked at me very strangely, had no idea what I was talking about. Now, I recognize in some parts of the country they call it a sub, some places they call it a hero, other places they call it a hoagie. But if you're from Connecticut, like I am, you are fully familiar with either a meatball or a sausage grinder. As the story goes, the name grinder actually originated with dock workers in New London, Connecticut, around 1913. An Italian immigrant named Benedetto Capaldi started selling these overstuffed sandwiches filled with meatballs or sausage on a lightly toasted roll that was so chewy they practically demanded real jaw effort, giving birth to the nickname grinder. By the 1920s, the word had spread from Connecticut ports to Rhode Island shipyards to Massachusetts neighborhoods and factories, distinguishing these hot sandwiches. Could be meatball, could be sausage, could be sausage and peppers, a little onion in there. It is still my all-time favorite. This hearty sandwich quickly became a Northeastern favorite, establishing the sauce-drenched meatball or sausage grinder as the undisputed gold standard of sandwiches. So now you know the story of the meatball grinder. By the way, lunch was terrific. The Republicans had a very tough set of special elections in Florida. It's a warning sign, I think, for Republicans. Democrats flipped a reliably red Florida House seat that just happens to include President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago mansion, exposing growing frustration among some conservative voters, not with Trump, but with the Republican Party, as they see as failing to deliver. In this case, Democrat Emily Gregory narrowly defeated Trump-endorsed Republican candidate John Maples by just over 2 points in House District 87. This is a stunning 11-point swing from 2024. That's when President Trump carried this district by 11 points. Democrats also pulled off an upset in a Tampa area state Senate seat, despite being heavily outspent. These losses, I fear, point to a deeper problem heading into the midterms. Republican leadership is failing to act with urgency. Despite holding strong majorities in Florida, where Republicans now outnumber Democrats in terms of registration by 1.3 million voters. That is quite a shift. Florida used to be considered a purple state. Now it is a solidly red state. That's largely because of Republican inroads among Hispanic voters, not just Cuban Americans or Venezuelan Americans, but actually among all Hispanic voters, including Puerto Rican Americans. That, I think, explains the shift in what were heretofore deep blue counties like Miami-Dade. Both Governor Ron DeSantis and President Donald Trump carried Miami-Dade in their last 2 elections. Despite these majorities, I think Republican lawmakers have dragged their feet on advancing key elements of the president's agenda, including, of course, the Save America Act. I've written and spoken about this extensively. It's really very simple. There are 50 votes in the U.S. Senate today for a simple law that requires that one be a U.S. citizen in order to vote in a federal election, and that one have a photo ID. Who could be against that, right? I mean, who would be in favor of people who are not American citizens voting in an American election? But Republican leaders have made every possible excuse in dragging their feet, not approving these common sense election integrity measures. And frankly, I think the voters are angry about it. There is a dichotomy between Republican voters and Trump voters. Donald Trump demonstrated in 2016, even in losing in 2020, or at least allegedly losing, and once again in 2024, that he is far more popular than the Republican brand. The difference between, say, Donald Trump and Mitt Romney or John McCain has been the president's ability to attract independent and some Democrat votes that won him states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and others, which eluded the two previous Republican nominees. What's happening here, I think, is that grassroots voters are increasingly frustrated by what they see as weak establishment-style politics, campaigning on Trump's popularity and then failing to use their power to uphold the America First agenda. Even in victory, Republicans underperformed. A separate Republican win in another House seat in Florida came by a much narrower margin than expected, showing how declining enthusiasm has become the norm. The only way to turn this around is for Republicans to double down on the America First agenda and do everything they possibly can in the next several months to deliver on that agenda. It's not enough just to pay lip service to the president. Republicans must be willing to use their power to enact that agenda, even if it means offending the special interests. If Republicans don't show some courage soon, well, it could yet be a rough November. On the other hand, those who've thrown in the towel on the 2026 elections don't understand the volatility of the American electorate and where we are today. As we saw after the horrific events in Butler, Pennsylvania, the American electorate is extremely volatile and things can change very quickly. Republicans will go into this election, by the way, with an enormous financial advantage. Between the president's political action committees and the Republican congressional, senatorial, and national committees, we have a massive financial advantage over the Democrats. And the reason that's important is because, you see, they have ABC, NBC, and CBS, CNN, and MSNBC. If you counted them as in-kind corporate contributions, which is exactly what they are, because those are not journalistic outlets, folks. Those are mouthpieces for the Democrat Party. Well, then you might have an even fight. So Republicans need this financial advantage to go into the 2026 elections and have any prospect of success. Meanwhile, the White House is forcefully rejecting media reports claiming that Iran prefers Vice President J.D. Vance to lead nuclear negotiations, calling those stories false and part of a foreign propaganda game. Sources from CNN, among others, cited anonymous regional sources alleging that Tehran sees Vance as a more favorable negotiator due to his alleged, but not confirmed, opposition to the war. I don't know of any place that the vice president has publicly or privately disagreed with the president. Now, conversations between the president and the vice president should and will remain confidential. So we don't know what Vance's private views are because in his job as vice president, he does not publicly express them. But he's made it abundantly clear that he remains in full support of the war effort and he's in lockstep with the rest of the administration. A senior White House official said this narrative is utterly false, warning that it appears to be a coordinated attempt by some foreign actors to sow division and weaken U.S. leverage. The reports notably relied once again on unnamed sources. You see, when the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal cites an unnamed source, let me give you a hint. That means nobody ever actually said what they're claiming, because these so-called journalists aren't journalists at all. They're propagandists holding up a left-wing point of view. The reports notably once again relied on these unnamed sources without confirming that they were even Iranian officials. Once again, it raises serious questions about their credibility. But if you followed this storyline, the president announced that we were in negotiations with Iranians. The stock market reacted favorably. Even the oil markets reacted favorably. Then Iran announced that there were no negotiations going on. The mainstream media rushed to bolster the Iranian claim, ignoring our own president. Then it turns out that they ultimately confirmed that there are back-channel negotiations going on with people at the highest levels of the Iranian government. So proves once again that Donald Trump is the master of the deal, the art of the deal, if you will. And he made it clear that negotiations are a team effort which involves multiple senior figures, which includes Jared Kushner and envoy Steve Witkoff. Conservative voices are also pushing back. Commentators argue the story bears the hallmarks of foreign disinformation, aimed at exploiting perceived divisions within the administration. The administration won't be falling for it. Iran has been deeply weakened. The administration will not be confused into taking their foot off the throats of the regime. Iran will never have a nuclear bomb, and the world will be safer as a result of the president's decision to take action. Now, he was elected as a non-interventionist. Don't think the president loves war, but we don't have access to the intelligence that he has. And therefore, I believe Donald Trump. I believe he's made a decision that is in the best interests of the country. No, it's not endless foreign war like brought to us by the Bushes and Dick Cheney. No boots on the ground, not tens, if not 20, 30,000 or more U.S. casualties, not billions of dollars in very rich defense contracts for Halliburton and General Dynamics and the rest of the defense contractors, but more specifically, the limited, projected, lethal use of American force on a limited basis where it works. We saw it the first time in Iran, where I think we destroyed about 75% of their nuclear capability. We saw it again in Venezuela. We're seeing it right now again in Iran. The Democrats, I think, are hoping for a long, drawn-out war. I think they're in for a surprise. Donald Trump is the master of the negotiations, and I know for a fact, because I saw him last weekend, he prefers peace over war. He prefers a negotiated settlement. I think folks may be surprised. I think we're closer to peace than people know. When we come back, we're going to talk about how Jack Smith, the special counsel, actually subpoenaed the phone records belonging to the current FBI director, Kash Patel. According to records made public by the Senate Judiciary Committee Republicans, Smith sought years of data from Verizon covering Patel's calls, text, and even his financial details from late 2020 to 2023. What could possibly have been the probable cause for Jack Smith to investigate the man who is our current FBI director? Could it be that he was an outspoken supporter of the president at the time, who vocally opposed the deep state and spoke truth about the election fraud, calling the move dangerous and deeply alarming? When we come back, we're going to break that all down, because it turns out that the Biden administration wasn't just spying on our current FBI director. They were also spying on the current White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. So in other words, they illegally and unconstitutionally spied on Donald Trump in 2016 and 2024. More when we come back in the Stone Zone. We'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
It is a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
You know, I saw the president this weekend. I noticed this morning that he put our photo together up on social media. Greatest president in my lifetime, and a man of incredible energy. Oh, it's outrageous when I saw J.B. Pritzker, a guy who's so fat he can't get out of his own way, actually said that the president is suffering from dementia. Really? President Trump not only published all of his medical records, but he also published a cognitive test, which he's not required in any way to do, to show that he had a perfect score. So it's ironic when I see these Democrats, as well as those in the media, who never question the fact that Joe Biden was a diaper-wearing vegetable who was heavily sedated through much of his presidency, questioning whether our president is in vibrant health. Watch him play golf sometime and tell me he's not in great physical shape. I knew both of the president's parents, and they both lived and were vital and were actually active into their 90s. The president comes from very tough Scotch-Irish stock, and the fact that those who never question the health of Joe Biden, both physical and mental, now casting aspersions on the president's health, it is truly, truly outrageous. Once again, we find that those who spied on Donald Trump's 2016 campaign were spying on the president once again. I said recently that the Russian collusion hoax was the greatest single dirty trick in American political history, the greatest single abuse of power, because they used the full authority of the U.S. government to spy on a presidential campaign. But now I have to correct myself. I think Arctic frost, the extra-constitutional efforts of Special Counsel Jack Smith, actually tops the Russian collusion hoax. And now we learn that Jack Smith actually concealed the fact that he surveilled a telephone conversation between the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, by the way, the first woman Chief of Staff in American history, and her attorney. The subpoenas that revealed this were part of Arctic Frost, the sweeping investigation in 2022 that targeted more than a dozen Republican lawmakers and associates connected to President Donald Trump's re-election efforts, including yours truly. So the question is, since this probe actually included the seizure of a telephone used by President Trump himself, when will these conspirators be brought to justice? Ultimately, this particular case, as cited today, was dropped after Trump's 2024 election victory, when it became clear that these kind of invasive fishing expeditions were no longer going to receive support within the executive branch. But Republican lawmakers today were correctly calling Arctic Frost a modern-day Watergate. I say it's time for prosecutions against Jack Smith and John Brennan, the CIA director, James Comey, the FBI director, Susan Rice, the national security advisor, Hillary Clinton herself, her campaign manager, John Podesta. I saw Jake Sullivan the other day attacking the president on Iran. Jake Sullivan was up to his keister in the Russian collusion hoax. Why has he not been indicted and brought to trial? Yes, until he is, we have a two-tier justice system in America, and that's just not acceptable. Thanks for joining us today on the Stone Zone. We'll be back in just a few seconds with a lot more of hot politics right here in the Stone Zone.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. A tragic killing in Chicago is reigniting debate over sanctuary city policies and the cost to American communities. Authorities tell us that 25-year-old Venezuelan national Jose Medina, an illegal immigrant, was charged with the murder of an 18-year-old Loyola University student named Sheridan Gorman, who was shot during a late-night walk with friends near her campus. Investigators say the attack appeared random, with Medina allegedly opening fire as the group tried to flee. Gorman, a freshman just beginning her college journey, was killed instantly, leaving her family and community understandably devastated. The case is drawing national attention not just for its brutality, but for the clear policy failures that led to this senseless murder. You see, federal officials confirm that Medina entered the U.S. illegally in 2023 and then was later released into the country. He had a prior arrest in Chicago, but he was never turned over to immigration authorities, consistent with the city's long-standing sanctuary policies under Mayor Brandon Johnson, whose approval rating and his IQ are about the same, 6%. This is also the policy of J.B. Pritzker, the man who would be president. The tragedy shows yet again what happens when liberal localities refuse to enforce immigration law. Innocent people here are being killed. Tragedies will continue to happen. It's occurred again and again. President Donald Trump has pointed to the case as evidence of why every jurisdiction must work with his administration and ICE to get illegals out of the country. Still, local leaders are defending existing policies, even as Gorman's family expresses deep frustration with a system that failed to protect their daughter. We must continue pushing for mass deportations, as no illegal immigrant lawbreaker can be trusted to abide by the law after they broke the law to come into the country to begin with. It's just common sense. I am, by all admission, a total and complete political junkie. I eat, sleep, and breathe politics, and I'm watching that Texas U.S. Senate race very, very closely. A new poll suggests that Texas Republicans are coalescing around Attorney General Ken Paxton as he takes a clear and commanding lead over Senator John Cornyn running into the GOP Senate runoff. I saw Ken Paxton on Friday night at Mar-a-Lago and exchanged greetings with him. He reminded me that he visited me in Fort Lauderdale. One Sunday night I cooked dinner for our families, and he treated him to some of my famous Sunday gravy, which he remembered fondly. I told him we'd have dinner again when he wins this runoff. According to a new Qantas Insights poll, the Texas Attorney General, Paxton, longtime and solid supporter of the president, leads the incumbent John Cornyn 48.8 to 41.3, with fewer than 10% undecided. Now, in the first round, there was a third candidate, Congressman Wesley Hunt, who I very much like, a solid conservative, but he was eliminated in the primary. Nobody got 50%, so we go to a runoff. What appears to be happening now is the supporters of Congressman Hunt are breaking heavily towards Ken Paxton, signaling consolidation among grassroots voters looking for a stronger conservative voice. The poll paints a picture of a highly engaged electorate also. Interesting to me that more than 88% say they are certain to vote, with 79% saying their choice is locked in and they will not change their mind. Paxton's supporters in the poll appear more committed, reinforcing its advantage as early voting approaches. Meanwhile, Cornyn continues to face criticism over his record in Washington, including support for multiple judicial nominees under Joe Biden. Votes did not require tiebreakers from Vice President Kamala Harris. Those decisions had lasting consequences on key policy battles as Cornyn-backed liberal judges abused their authority to continue to block crucial Trump administration policy initiatives. Other polling, including data from Impact Research, shows Paxton with an even wider lead. The runoff is set for May 26th, and looking like one of the most infamous rhinos in the U.S. Senate will be replaced with a genuine America First fighter on that date. I promise you, we will bring Senator-elect Ken Paxton into the Stone Zone when that happens. Keep an eye on that race. Meanwhile, a jury has delivered a major verdict against big tech, finding that the Meta company failed to adequately protect children from online predators and misled users about the safety of its platforms. The social media giant now faces a $375 million civil penalty. That case, brought by New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres, exposes troubling allegations that Facebook and Instagram allowed underage users to bypass safeguards while failing to enforce their own policies. Prosecutors argued that the Meta company's algorithms made it easier for predators to target minors, as Mark Zuckerberg's tech entity prioritized user growth and engagement over basic safety. Over 6 weeks of testimony, jurors heard from former and current Meta executives, educators, and online safety experts. I followed this trial very carefully. The evidence painted a picture of a company aware of risks, but unwilling to take any meaningful action against them. In one particularly alarming example, a state-led sting operation created test accounts posing as minors, which were quickly flooded with explicit content and contacted by suspected child sex predators, leading immediately to multiple arrests. State Attorney Linda Singer told jurors these failures were no accident, but the result of corporate decisions that put profits ahead of our children's well-being. Well, the jury agreed with them. Meta says it will appeal the ruling, continues to deny any culpability, but they're just denying the truth. The company claims it employs tens of thousands of workers focused on safety. It has invested heavily in automated tools to detect harmful activity. But as we saw in the lead up to the 2020 presidential election, these workers really care more about censoring those they disagree with than protecting children. You see, with Elon Musk buying Twitter, converting it to X, and then publicly exposing all the records that prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that American intelligence community officials worked hand in glove with Twitter executives to censor, cancel, silence those they disagreed with, whether it was about the safety and effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccination, or whether it was about the honesty, integrity of the 2020 election, or whether it was just support for President Donald Trump. Now, because X, which was formerly known as Twitter, which is, by the way, a great platform, not perfect in any way, but far, far better than it was under his previous leadership, many on the right believe that the entire issue of internet censorship and cancellation is over. Nothing could be further from the truth. Had Dr. Robert Epstein, a PhD from Harvard, a trained clinical psychologist and expert in this area, has built a model that demonstrates, for example, that Google is manipulating their content to the left as never before. In fact, based on his computer model, there's a 276% increase in liberal content coming through Google. Let me give you an example. So if you use the Google search engine to search online on any topic, Google creates a profile of you. They test your information against the voter file. If they find out that you lean to the left based on the things that you've chosen in a Google search, but you're not registered to vote, you will be besieged with emails urging you to register to vote, or telling you how to register to vote, or where to register to vote. If, on the other hand, your Google searches indicate that you lean to the right, in matching up your data with the voter lists in the state in which you live, you will receive no notification from Gmail urging you to register to vote. That's just one example of how they manipulate the flow of information. And they're at it again. They'll be doing it in time for the 2026 elections. I'm a great believer in free speech. I'm a great believer in the intelligence of the American voters. But at the same time, to try to pretend that internet censorship no longer is with us, well, that is just not true. Meanwhile, a new investigation raises serious concerns about foreign influence operations targeting the United States through far-left activist networks, media platforms, and taxpayer-funded nonprofits. This issue came into focus this week as Code Pink activist Olivia DeNucci appeared in Cuba aboard a vessel dubbed the Grandma 2.0, openly celebrating the communist regime and echoing anti-American talking points. The event was amplified by outlets tied to a global network reportedly funded by tech billionaire Neville Roy Singham. According to Fox News Digital Investigations, Singham has built a sprawling international web of roughly 2,000 organizations, including at least 200 directly involved in shaping political messaging. Many of these groups operate in the United States as nonprofits, and many of them are benefiting from tax-exempt status while promoting narratives aligned with the Chinese Communist Party. Financial records show hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through this network over several years. In one case, U.S.-based nonprofits reportedly spent more than $9 million sent to a Shanghai media firm that produces pro-Chinese communist content. Lawmakers are now calling for investigation into whether these organizations are abusing the tax code and undermining American interests. This is not random activism, but a coordinated strategy rooted in global communist agenda, using media, protests, and cultural institutions to try to shape public opinion and weaken American national unity from within. Now, President Trump has deemed Antifa to be a terrorist organization. That must not just be groups that call themselves Antifa. It must encompass any organization that operates like Antifa and pushes the Antifa line. It's time for leftist organizations like this to be shut down and have their tax status pulled, and their organizers and funders, starting with this shady character Neville Roy Singham, must be prosecuted under the full extent of the law. Meanwhile, New York City Mayor Mamdani, the far-left Islamist mayor of New York City, is facing sharp criticism after unveiling a taxpayer-funded Mayor's Office of Mass Engagement, a program expected to cost nearly $2 million in salaries, despite the fact that the city faces a looming $5 billion budget shortfall. According to reports, the new office will hire at least 14 staffers, many earning six-figure salaries, to organize volunteer networks and push advocacy campaigns aligned with Mamdani's socialist political agenda. You heard it here first in the Stone Zone. This is what the people have chosen. I believe that they will regret it. Don't go away, because we'll be right back with more hot politics on the other side.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court appears poised to side with the Trump administration on whether asylum seekers can be turned away at the southern border before entering the country. During oral arguments before the Supreme Court, a majority of the justices signaled support for the view that migrants must actually cross into the United States, not simply just arrive at the border, to claim asylum protections under federal law. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett suggested the legal phrase "arrives in" implies full entry, not just showing up at the port of entry. If the court rules that way, it could revive a Trump-era policy from the first term, allowing border officials to deny entry to asylum seekers before they set foot in U.S. soil, a move that is critical to restoring order at the border. The Biden administration previously scrapped that policy, ushering a surge of illegal crossings and a backlog of immigration cases stretching years into the future. Experts that I respect tell me that as many as 38 million people may have entered the United States illegally during the Biden years. That doesn't take into consideration the weaponry or the drugs that they brought with them. Millions of migrants were released in the country while awaiting hearings, often with no clear legal resolution in sight, just how the Biden regime and the Democrats wanted it. Justice Brett Kavanaugh also questioned the distinction between being at the border versus being inside it, calling the debate very artificial. The court's liberal wing, of course, raised concerns about limiting asylum seekers, arguing that the United States has an obligation to hear claims from those seeking refuge. Still, existing asylum law requires migrants to seek protection in the first safe country they enter, something critics say has been widely ignored. And the refugee system has been perverted by proponents of mass migration who organize truckloads of caravans from third world countries and set up illegals with lawyers who have them file bogus asylum claims before they are lost in the ether and end up floating around America. Those days, I think, are coming to an end as the Supreme Court is expected to give the Trump administration its second powerful win this week. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court seemed to signal that mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day will not be counted. They call it Election Day for a reason. Same reason we call it Christmas Day or Thanksgiving Day or Memorial Day or Veterans Day. I think it was Clarence Thomas who made that argument. If the court indeed comes down on that side of the mail-in ballot issue, it will be a powerful boost to Republicans in the midterm election. Meanwhile, this story is a head-scratcher. Questions are being raised after a series of troubling incidents involving American scientists and researchers, with some lawmakers warning the pattern deserves closer scrutiny. Retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCaslin disappeared into New Mexico in February, prompting concern due to his background in advanced military research. Congressman Tim Burchett, a good friend of mine, says McCaslin's case may not be isolated. Burchett told reporters there have been several similar disappearances nationwide, particularly among individuals tied to our intelligence agencies and particularly sensitive fields. He urged Americans to pay attention, warning against blind trust in government institutions when it comes to highly classified research. Now, while General McCaslin's family says no foul play is currently suspected, investigative journalist Ross Coulthard has publicly questioned whether some may have targeted the retired general, citing his knowledge of advanced military technologies. Other cases add to the concern. Scientist Monica Reza vanished during a hike in California in 2025. No sign of her. Around the same time, prominent researchers like MIT physicist Nunzo Luriero and astrophysicist Carl Guillaume were killed in separate but unexplained violent incidents. Authorities say there's no confirmed connection between these events, and in some cases, no foul play is suspected. But let me remind you, these are the same exact people who tell us that Lee Harvey Oswald killed President John F. Kennedy. 3 shots, all from behind, acted completely alone. That's not true either. Thanks for tuning in today in the Stone Zone, where 5 days a week we talk about the news, history, politics, and, well, we touch on food. If you didn't know what a meatball grinder was before today's show, well, you know now. I'm Roger Stone. Thanks for joining us in the Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.